South America is home to some of the most fantastic and creepiest mutations I've ever seen. One of them even involves a cyclops pig. The infamous pig with a cyclops face. This poor creature was discovered in Venezuela on a farm somewhere, and from my understanding from the comments I was reading is that the animal suffers from a rare disorder called cyclopia. This is when the brain, during the stages of pregnancy, doesn't split into the left and right hemispheres, leaving it still jumbled together as one. Patients with this defect are usually only left with one eye, or an eye that's only partially separated. They don't have a nose, and if they do, it's usually just a tiny little bump that looks like a nose. Sadly, animals with this disorder don't usually stay around for too long after birth, and there is no way to prevent it or cure it. Scientists are still trying to figure out why this defect happens, and right now they're speculating it may have something to do with having 3 copies of chromosome 13, or gestational diabetes. In the past, they had believed that maybe it had something to do with environmental factors with the mother, but that's been debunked. Parents could also carry the gene as well, and thankfully doctors are able to tell with MRI or ultrasounds if there are early signs of cyclopia. Tira, the extremely rare polka-dotted zebra. We all know that zebras have their very distinct stripe pattern of black and white, which serves a very important purpose than just looking cool. No stripes are the same. Each set of stripes you see on a zebra is like the human fingerprint, making them very distinct from one another. This allows zebras in a herd to identify each other or if they get separated. Their stripes also serve as a camouflage. It helps break their silhouette when they're up against darker backgrounds, confusing their predators as to what the heck they're looking at. Something I didn't know till recently, bugs also do not like to land on striped surfaces, making them a repellent almost to bug bites such as horseflies. Tira, as we know, does not have these advantages like her parents. She suffers from a genetic mutation called pseudomelanin, and what happened was that her melanin decided to clump together in spots rather than the usual stripes. It's not the first time this has happened, but the specific pattern outcome with her appearance made her a celebrity. Scientists will be keeping a close eye on her to see how this genetic mutation affects her survival. A white Puma Cub named Itze was born in Nicaragua Zoo towards the end of 2024. Pumas are known as the cats of one color, but realistically, their color can differentiate depending on what their location is. These colors can range from brown to yellow, or even gray to red. The pumas that have the gray colors are often found in colder, temperate areas, where it's vice versa for those with the reddish coloring. Pumas' coats are extremely thick, keeping them both protected from the cold, mountainous ranges they like to inhabit, as well as making a great camouflage. However, with Itze's case, her much warmer habitat makes it a little harder with her genetic mutation of albinism. This has to be both carried in the mother and father for it to produce albino offspring, so it's extremely rare when those cases do happen. The sun's UV rays are quite harmful to her sensitive eyes, but thankfully she is placed into an environment where she can receive the proper care, whereas albino animals born in the wild often have a harder time keeping up with the rest of their family. Itze's mother loves her and so do her siblings, so she'll be doing just fine over there. The Amazon mollyfish, the hybrid that shrugs off any harmful mutation. What scientists understood about mutations and animals that choose to reproduce alone is that eventually they would potentially go extinct. This usually happens due to the lack of other genes mixing with each other, making it extremely difficult for them to adapt in different environments or if something changes in their current ones. It is very important for similar species to mix different genes, creating offspring that essentially become the survival of the fittest trope, and down the line making even more offspring that become stronger than them. But this species doesn't seem to care, and in fact, what researchers thought about them disappearing after 2,000 years, they actually discovered their species has been around for 100,000 years, with very little deterioration in their line. They are speculated to be a hybrid of the Atlantic molly and sailfin molly, and somehow this version of mollyfish kept its hybrid genome to keep thriving the way that they do. They made the foundation of a really good genetic hybrid. Talk about a power move. Mutations in animals aren't uncommon. Hybrid animals exist all over the world, and some hybrid mutations involve domesticated dogs and foxes. A dog and a fox hybrid found in the wild, also known as the Dogxim. This pup fox was found in Brazil by accident, and what they discovered about the new species brought insight into human interference with the wildlife. When they tested the DNA samples on the hybrid, researchers discovered that the Dogxim had genes from a domesticated dog and the sandy-haired pampas fox. This doesn't happen, and if it did, the chances are extremely low because of how different these two species genus are. If anything, it really shouldn't be scientifically possible, but here we are. The hybrid had a total of 76 chromosomes, and when comparing it to their parents, the dog had 78, while the fox had 74, right down in the middle. The only thing making scientists believe this is possible is because they realized that the two animals had a common ancestor that started to separate 6.7 million years ago. Inner similarities. Considering the area that the species was discovered in, it's speculated that as the forest areas begin to shrink, the foxes started intermingling with domestic animals. So in short, this may not be the last time we see a hybrid pop out because of this issue. The pink dolphins of the Amazon rivers, and no one really knows why they're actually pink. They are strictly freshwater mammals and are still just as intelligent and happy as their marine counterparts. They are still being studied to this day, but thankfully there are some discoveries made about them, such as their color can possibly come from the food that they eat, similar to flamingos, where they get their pinkish color from the red, yellow, and orange pigments in plants. Pink dolphins will eat shrimp, crabs, small fish, turtles, and even piranhas, which could be one way that they're getting those specific pigments. They're not necessarily picky eaters, since they apparently have teeth similar to human molars, but that seems to be all they can find in their area. Especially when looking for food, they have stiff little hairs on their beak that work as sensory organs to help them sense the presence of their prey beneath murky waters. Normal dolphins have a fused vertebrae, whereas the pink dolphins don't, and they're able to freely move their neck around. Some folklore about them as well, where it's been said that at night they'll transform into really handsome men. The glass frog, given its name for obvious reasons that it is nearly see-through. A really creepy fact about these guys is that they will become 60% more transparent when they sleep. And how they do this is that they will move all their red bodily fluids into a sac that's hidden within their liver while they sleep. These sacs are coated with a specific light-reflecting crystal, making it easier to keep the bright red color hidden at night. It baffles scientists because usually we only see translucent animals in deep waters since light can't penetrate that far down. So for this vertebrate to be able to find a balance between the day and night and not be harmed by the sun is fascinating. The male frogs, after the female lays her eggs, will be the one to look after them until they turn into tadpoles. They will stay there for as long as it takes, ninja fighting off predators that are trying to get to the eggs. Despite being slightly see-through, they have a light patterning on their backside that resembles their eggs, making it all the more confusing for predators when they try to attack. Super tiny, but super cool. The Haurizo, the hybrid offspring of a llama and an alpaca. They are quite common too in any area that has both of these animals. They pretty much don't serve any purpose outside of Peru. They're also kind of in the middle of their parents' quality in terms of meat and fur, with the Haurizo having more quality to the fur than llamas, but not as much as alpacas. Yes, they'll also supply meat at times, but because they're not in that high of a demand, especially in the US where there is literally no demand for their meat, they'll pretty much just be used for the fiber in their wool that also varies in terms of price. They're kind of just there, really. They don't produce anything too crazy worthy of value, but it's good to have extra, I guess. They also don't reproduce themselves. The majority of hybrids are sterile. Their population still continuously changes over time, as well as how they look, neither having a specific type. On one website though, under the color section, they're labeled as nearly anything since it can happen between pretty much any llama and alpaca.